The Acura Integra was designed with the purpose of kickstarting Honda's brand new luxury brand. And it wasn't just good for an economy car, it set out to prove that you can have something fun, comfortable, and sporty without breaking your bank account. And it never felt held back by being a front-wheel drive hatchback, because the Integra defined and redefined how great front-wheel drive cars can be. It was so good that Acura decided enough was enough and brought it back. Whether or not you like the new Integra, that puts the name on the same level as other greats like the Camaro, the Supra, and Acura's very own NSX. I'm Austin, and I like cars, and this week, because my friend Cam was going to kill me if I don't, we're going to talk about my favorite Honda Civic in a fancy suit, the Acura Integra. Sorry this one's coming out so late. I got sick. I'm still kind of recovering. Hopefully you can't hear it. And it's a one-man operation. Okay, sorry, let's talk about cars. To start, I think it's pretty important to go over why the Integra exists. By the 1980s, not just Honda, but all Japanese manufacturers were selling really well. And they were selling especially well in America. American cars at the time were struggling to appeal to buyers because to the average person who is concerned about gas mileage, the US domestic market was just kind of a non-option. But these little Japanese cars were the ultimate solution. The very first generation of Civics and Corollas didn't come off to the American people as cheap, they came off as affordable. And it seemed that the US government agreed that these cars were too good, because in 1981, they passed a law restricting the amount of cars Japan could import to 1.68 million. Now that still sounds like a pretty astronomical number, but in 1980, the year before, Japan had sent us almost 2 million cars. And from the data I saw, they were the biggest producer of cars in the world. And with a lot of Japan's exports being mass production economy cars, limiting the amount they could send in would be a death knell to companies such as Honda. To solve this, Honda came up with two very important plans. Number one was to start producing cars in the United States, such as the Honda Accord. But the main idea that they had was to start converting some of their quantity into quality. And from that idea, the beginning concepts of Acura were founded. Now, normally I wouldn't want to go too far into the details of the overarching company itself, but I thought the context of why the Integra was made was pretty important to understand what made it good and the overall story around it. Honda wasn't making more premium cars because they really wanted to. It was an almost forced change put in place that they just made the best of. And in 1986, the very first Acuras were released in America, with the Acura Legend and, of course, the Integra. Now, the Legend was a completely new design and was created to convince people of the Acura nameplate, but the Integra would be the car that would really kickstart the brand. And how did Honda make sure the Acura Integra would be such a great success? By rebadging a car called the Honda Quint. The Quint was a Japanese subcompact hatchback. There's really not that much you need to know about the Quint other than the fact that it was heavily based off of the Civic at the time, complete with a very important independent suspension. By having the Integra essentially be an upscaled Civic, it meant they could drastically reduce the amount of money they had to spend in order to make a new, good car. And fortunately for Acura, this also meant from the moment it touched the shores of America, much like the Civic it was based on, it was an immediate success. The first gen alone sold over 200,000 units in 4 years, and I honestly think it's pretty easy to see why. Although the D16 engine inside of it wasn't a rocket ship, it was still pushing a pretty respectable 113 horsepower. It also had the previously mentioned fully independent suspension, which was a soon-to-be staple of the Integra nameplate. And finally, the fact that it was based on the Civic didn't stop the Integra from looking the part. It was sleek, it was sporty, it looked more upscale. I'm not going to say the first gen is the best one, but like a lot of cars I've talked about on this channel so far, you can see the first gen as a real rough draft for the rest of the line. After the first gen wowed Americans, convincing them that Japan could make more than a simple economy car, they gave us the second generation. Releasing in 1989, the second gen Tegi gave us the most important characteristic of fast, fun Hondas. It brought us VTEC.
Hey! 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 Flagship! Oh, this is sick!
VTEC, which means variable valve timing and lift electronic control system, in short, is a way to solve having an economic but fun car at the same time. When you're in the low rev ranges, a car with VTEC will be good on gas and very simple. But when you bring it up higher, the car opens up, gets all shouty and excited. Now, it actually was not the first Acura to bring VTEC stateside. That honor goes to the NSX, but unlike the NSX, it was still completely affordable to your average person. And although the technology wasn't found in every trim, the Integra GSR was a fantastic introduction for the American people. It made a peppy 160 horsepower, and although it doesn't sound like much, my 88 RX-7 only makes 150 horsepower. I can confidently say I understand how this car earned its reputation. The coupe variant especially is a very smart looking upscale car, and this generation had a lot of ideas that helped it punch above its weight class, such as, very importantly, double wishbone suspension in the front and rear of the car instead of cheaper, more economical McPherson struts. It was definitely more expensive, but they knew making the Integra drive better was worth the money. While the first gen showed us that Japan knew how to make a luxury car, the second gen helped push Acura to be one of the best-selling luxury brands in the States, outselling even the Germans of BMW and Mercedes-Benz, who'd had a stranglehold on the market forever. So if the first and second generations were so impressive, then why didn't I use them for the thumbnail? Because, releasing in 1993, the third generation Acura Integra is arguably the greatest front wheel drive car of all time. Now, so far I've talked about the fact that this car was just very fun to drive and haven't really mentioned how luxurious it is, but it really was comfortable. For example, the third generation came with air conditioning, leather upholstery, moonroofs, a CD player instead of a cassette player. None of its luxury technology was revolutionary or innovative, but it was made to last and it was done well. It was a sensible car that even your Grammy would like. Hi, G-Ma. But that's not the version of the Integra people remember. Acura also gave us a version that removed all of these luxury options. The Integra Type R stripped away everything, including the AC. And it was all done just to keep the weight down. But the engineers wanted to take it even further, so they gave it a lighter flywheel, they removed sound deadening, they trimmed off pieces of the parts, they even got rid of the spare wheel well. The Type R ended up weighing 150 pounds less than the base model and 40 pounds less than the still sporty GSR trim. And it could have been even lighter than that, but they decided to put an extra structural rigidity for the chassis to make it drive even better. Then they took it a step further and seam welded the whole thing. I can't stress enough that that is not a normal thing for cars. Now, like the rest of the Integras before it, it had completely independent suspension. But now, after the second gen thankfully introduced them, it had the double wishbone setup in the front and rear, which made the car much more responsive. Meanwhile, to get it moving, Honda didn't slouch on that. The heart of the Type R is the 1.8 liter B18, which makes 195 horsepower at 8,000 RPM. Now, if you're a clever guy or gal watching this, you'd understand that that's 108 horsepower per liter, which is mind-boggling. It's more than a Ferrari F355. The B18 accomplishes this by being perfectly hand-built by Honda craftsmen and with specific parts in place to keep it perfectly balanced on the inside so you can run it out. It can put all that power down thanks to the Type R coming with a limited slip differential in the front and only a 5-speed manual. And finally, it really and truly looks the part. The Type R came exclusively as a coupe variant. And I mean, just look at it. That flashy rear wing, that beautiful front end, those sleek lines. It's kind of perfect. Now at this point, I'm sure you're super excited to hear about the 4th gen Integra, but at least in the US, we never actually got one. Kinda. Bear with me. So when Japan gave us the Integra under the Acura badge, they never actually gave themselves Acura. Unlike the States, they didn't think they needed a new brand just to show that Honda could make quality cars. So like the aforementioned NSX, the Integra in Japan was a Honda. And sometimes depending on where it was released, such as Japan and America, it could have some differences, such as the 3rd gen's front end being the spider eyes in the States and the more classic Integra front end in Japan. And let me know in the comments below whether you like the American style spider eye headlights or the more classic Japanese Integra style lights. And while you're at it, if you liked the video, make sure to throw a big ol' like, and if you don't like it, a like anyways. And if you want to see me talk about more car related things, go ahead and hit the sub button. I really appreciate it. I'm trying to hit 100 before my birthday. That's in October. Anyways, so in Japan, they did end up having a 4th gen Integra, but in the States, we just called it the Acura RSX. Apparently they did this to make people notice the brand of Acura instead of the singular car Integra. Unfortunately for Acura, I don't really think it worked. Although it was the same type of car as the Integras of old, being an upscaled Civic, at this point other luxury brands had really gotten their act together. Other Japanese manufacturers, especially Lexus, had started to really take a hold on the market. And while the Japanese Integra got a brand new Type R, in the States, we didn't actually get the fastest Integra. We got its little brother, which got the Type R's hand-me-downs like bucket seats and a cool wing. But even in Japan, the Integra was starting to lose some of its pedigree, because the fourth generation stepped back from the fancy double wishbone suspension and adopted the simple McPherson struts in the front. So although Japan's Integra Type R still had a great engine and a great look, the third gen by a lot of accounts just drives better. And now in the States, if you wanted a cheap, fast, fun front-wheel drive car, why not just get the Civic Si? I personally don't think the 4th Gen RSX Integra is a bad car, but it is almost undeniably not on the same level as its predecessors. This is also pretty far after the Japanese economic bubble had popped, so the days of being able to make a much more expensive, nice economy car were long gone. Not to mention the Integra just didn't sell as well as it used to. Even the 3rd gen never hit the sales highs of the 1st and 2nd gen, so when the 4th generation finished its run in 2006, both the Integra name and the RSX didn't get a sequel. Until last year. In an attempt to bring back excitement around their brand, Acura has revived the Integra nameplate. After 15 years staying dormant, the Integra is back. And unlike some other models that have been brought back from the dead, the 5th Gen Taggy is back in the exact same vision as the original. It's a Civic Si put in a brand new fancy suit. And while it may be exactly what the engineers wanted it to be, I'm not really sure it's what the people want it to be. The only people that would really care about the Integra as a name coming back are people that like cars. So car nerds, like me. Meanwhile, people that like cars have never excitedly talked about how comfortable the ride is in the Taggy or how good the air conditioning is. Because the Integra is now remembered as an inspired front-wheel drive sports car that can outrun cars double its price. But now we have the Civic Type R, which does exactly that. And the 5th gen is only available as a 4-door sedan. So while the 5th gen may be a modern interpretation of what the Integra originally was, it's not really the Integra anybody wants. But in my opinion, that really hasn't harmed the Integra's legacy. The name is still a sacred one to so many people that love Japanese cars. The old Integras were frequent frontrunners in plenty of motorsport events, such as the British Touring Car Championship. The engine could always take so much power, so you saw it on drag strips all the time. And nowadays, it's not uncommon at all to see the Integra at autocross or at track days. People love these things. The only car you don't see around anymore is the Integra Type R, because like a lot of famous Japanese cars from the 90s, they've begun to massively balloon in price. I have a pretty long list of cars that I want. The Integra's pretty dang high up, like top 5. So whether or not every single generation was absolutely perfect, the Integra rewrote the rulebook on how good a simple hatchback was allowed to be. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. I appreciate it. Video's over. If you like the Integra, let me know below. And if you don't, tell me a car you want me to talk about. I have a couple ideas from what I've seen in the comments that I want to talk about. Maybe something a little more expensive for the next video. Anyways, make sure to hit all the wacky fun buttons like and subscribe. I'm Austin, I like cars, and I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Get out of here. Get on.